I'm Adrienne Giffen. Welcome to Now You're Talking, the podcast. I believe real conversation connects us in a distracted world. One of the greatest gifts you can give your family and yourself is your presence. Because leadership doesn't begin at work, it begins at home. This is your space to pause, to listen, to reflect. Your journey toward deeper connections starts right here. Today, I'm joined by Laura Todd. Laura is a certified prenatal mental health therapist who specializes in early childhood mental health and the powerful bond between parents and their children. Her work helps families understand how early relationships shape emotional resilience, stress response, and lifelong connection. If you've ever wondered whether you're doing enough as a parent or how to build stronger connection in everyday moments, this conversation will remind you that connection doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. Let the conversations begin. Laura, thank you for joining me today. Laura Todd is a certified prenatal mental health therapist and infant and early childhood mental health specialist. Say that fast a few times.
I know.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to learning a lot about why this field. What made you start this, and what is it about your journey that brought you to this place?
Thank you so much. I love that question because my journey to getting here starts really, really young. When I was about 6 years old, my family went into therapy. We were having issues within the family, and we decided we needed to get some help. And so we found a family therapist, and this was a therapist that we had been meeting individually and as a group off and on for years. And at one point when I was in middle school, I told this therapist, I want to do what you do. I want to help families heal. I want to help families feel better. And he said, okay, you be the therapist then in our session.
Interesting. And how old were you then?
I was like 11 or 12.
Boy, yeah.
And so he made me be a therapist for him for our session where he was talking about issues with his wife. And I was like, I don't know what to do. But it was great. And it just got me started on this path of wanting to be a therapist, wanting to work with kids. And so I just kind of kept going back to psychology classes, psychology, trainings. That's my bachelor's degrees in psychology. And then I went to get my master's in therapy and did my practicums always with kids. And then I got hired as a birth to 5 therapist for our county. And I just kept doing sort of the same thing because I was just so drawn to working with families with young kids and just helping them be better families, be more connected together.
It sounds to me like your parents were very progressive. to get you in, and how many siblings, or is it just you? Can you share a little bit?
I have 3 older siblings.
Okay.
There were 4 of us total. Having talked to a lot of parents of my generation, I would say yes, because so many parents that I've talked to now talk about wanting or needing therapy growing up and their parents just not doing it. And it was something that my mom was just like, nope, we are having issues. Our daughter, or my sister, is having issues. We're having issues as a family. This is beyond our scope. Let's go get help. I think it helped that my mom worked as a statistician for a psychiatrist, so was very familiar with the mental health space. And found a great therapist to begin with. Like I said, we've been going to him off and on for years. My mom still went to him a decade ago. So this is like early 1990s to 2015, seeing the same therapist.
Wow, interesting.
Off and on. So yeah, they were definitely very ahead of their time for the 90s, which I didn't realize at the time.
And both parents? So you would go as a complete family unit?
Mm-hmm. So it'd be us and all 4 kids, and then we would have individual sessions as well, or even parent-child sessions. So I know my mom and my sister would go together sometimes. My mom and one of my brothers would go sometimes together. Again, as issues came up, depending on the situation, it would be different people who would attend the session as needed.
Wow, isn't that? I think that is so forward thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And how has it impacted your siblings in terms of has it had any impact in their careers and their career choices?
I don't think it impacted their careers necessarily. I have one brother who is an engineer.
Yes.
Computer engineer. My sister and her husband own a dog grooming shop and breed dogs. And then my other brother is a professor of jazz studies. But I will say that my sister is in such a good place right now. And it, I think, is due to that therapist. I don't think she would be where she is today without him. I don't think anyone in my family would disagree with that. It was actually their conversations, my mom and my sister, and his conversation about how to help her and got her connected to dogs that really saved her. And so, like, yes, in some sense it did, but it was really just the fact that we got help so early on in our life.
Yes.
That I think really made a huge difference in all of us being happy, healthy, for the most part, functioning adults. Obviously, everybody had something going on, but
sure.
We all have tools that we learned as children because of going to therapy so early.
Wow, that's a fascinating journey. And so you decided to start your own business from scratch with 2 little kids. How do you do it all? You have a 4-month-old and a 13-month-old who's probably starting to walk.
Yeah, we just got video of him taking his first independent steps like today. So yeah, he's walking. Our 4-year-old has his own opinions and thoughts and feelings about a lot of things now. It's definitely hard. It's not easy. It's definitely a lot of making sure we utilize time appropriately. You know, when they're at childcare, you know, I'm working and focusing on the business. When they're home, I am focused and working, you know, with them and supporting them. And so it's really about making sure we prioritize the time that we have and using it wisely to do the things that we need to do, including taking care of myself, my husband taking care of himself, and taking care of each other as a couple. And so it's really about prioritizing when things get done and how they get done and the time that is available when it is available.
Which there doesn't always seem to be enough of it.
No, there's never enough of it. But also when things come up, because things come up with little ones, you know, illness happens, we pivot and we decide, you know what, this thing just needs to be on hold for now because this is what's taking priority is the health of our kids. So it's just always kind of shifting what the priority is and being able to pivot that, you know, priority and knowing that not everything needs to get done right now. You know, there's time eventually, you know, it will come when it needs to come. If I can't get this one, you know, thing launched, you know, immediately for the business, it will get done eventually when there's more capacity to do that. And so being okay with letting things go and happening at a certain time is okay too, because that will come up.
And that's a process, isn't it? To get to that point to say, okay, something's got to give. And it can't be the kids and it can't be our relationship. But if something's got to give, you sort of have to make that choice.
Yeah.
So what is going to give?
Yeah. I give this analogy a lot to my clients of, think about the balls that you have in your life, what are glass and what can bounce. And
that's a great analogy.
Yeah, I love it because it really brings into focus, okay, the dishes, can that bounce right now? Sure. Yeah, we can let the dishes bounce for a little bit because we have a toddler with a fever and, you know, needs medical care and needs support. But, you know, I can't, you know, bounce the toddler with the fever. Like that's a glass ball that we need to just keep kind of juggling in the air.
Yeah.
And those balls that bounce in glass can shift and they can change based on the time. Sometimes for me, the business is the one that has to bounce for a little bit and just needs to be on status quo. I can't expand anymore because something is going on with our family that, you know, we need to prioritize. And so, okay, then that's going to be a ball that bounces for a while. And until things shift, I can't pick up that ball again and move forward.
That is a powerful and simple analogy that we could use, all of us could use.
Absolutely.
In our lives.
I love it. It's really accessible.
No, thank you for sharing that. Can you share a little bit? You talk about your business's early bonds therapy. What does that mean?
Thank you. I love that question because it took us a really long time to come with a name for the company because so many, you know, perinatal, postpartum therapists talk about like motherhood and, you know, centering mom, which is great and absolutely needed. And while, yes, I do center moms and postpartum and pregnancy in my practice, I can't let go of the birth to 5 and little kids and the work that I do with, you know, infants, toddlers, and like preschools around regulation and emotional expression, and really talking about how parents can show up for their kids better. And so really what that is about is the bond between parents, and those early bonds being so important. And so when I came up with a name, early bonds therapy just really just stuck out among all the names we were kind of bouncing around in our head. And I just loved it because it really summarized the work that I do, which is really about that bonding between the caregiver, the parent, and their child in those early years. That is so important and foundational for all of us.
I was just going to say, it is so foundational for the rest of our lives. In all the chaos, in all the ways that we're pulled in so many directions, it's easy to let that slip.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if we're trying to do it all, going back to work and running the household and keeping a relationship alive. It's difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for our area in Silicon Valley, that's really hard because so many parents work for the big tech companies. They're very stressful. They're very high pressure jobs. And so it can be hard to pull away from that and go back to being like the very basics of how do I show up for my kids? How do I still feel fulfilled in my job, but still feel like I'm showing up the way that I want to as a parent? And what does that rhythm look like? Because it's such a huge shift in your rhythm of your day to day when you have a child in your household. And so that's why I thought Early Bonds was such a great name, because it really just focuses in on what it is that so many parents want, which is a good relationship with their kids, a healthy attachment with their kids. And so how do you get there? And that's kind of where I wanted to show in is this is how you do it. This is how you can integrate that into your life that is chaotic, that is busy, that is full of pressure, full of anxiety.
Yes.
Without adding more pressure and anxiety to your day-to-day life.
Yeah. So can you share a couple of helpful hints that people could take away right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things I love to tell parents is bonding with your child is not always an hour on the floor playing one-on-one. It is great, always encouraging people to do that. But bonding can also happen in the really small moments, like driving to and from somewhere, having a meal together, doing the laundry. It's all these small moments. It can be 5 minutes of quality time. That's what the real key is. It's quality over quantity. And so I really try to help parents, and including myself too, thinking about how can I make this moment full of quality, like getting dressed in the morning. Can I make that playful? So it's not just like, get your shirt on, get your pants on, let's go. Like, no, like, can you put your shirt on like you're a chicken? Like, why not? Like, yeah, making it playful and making it fun. And now you've got a bonding moment that could be a really like key stone in like your child's memory of my parents were so much fun in the morning. We used to do these silly games when we would get dressed. And that's the memories that kids remember more, is when parents showed up for these like very small moments. And so, yeah, that's one of the main things I always tell parents is it doesn't have to be this big song and dance, quality moment that takes hours and takes a lot of effort. Those are great and those are wonderful if you have the capacity and the time to do it. But also just talking about, what did you play with your friends at school today? You played trains? Tell me about what those trains were doing. Who was involved? And that also counts as bonding and attachment and quality time.
Well, isn't that great? And it's so easy what you were saying, get things done, get your breakfast, to get out the door. It's hard to sort of change that mindset.
It is. It's really, really hard. But once you get into it, it then becomes a lot easier. And you'll notice that your child will probably do it a little faster.
Really?
Yeah.
Great tip.
If you can make it playful, it usually goes faster and there's less frustration from the child and from you.
Well, that is such a great tip, Laura. That's fantastic. So, on your website, I was reading words that I'd never even heard of before. And your website was very helpful because then it talked about, gave an explanation. Two things that fascinated me. And it makes sense that you would focus on this given what you've talked about, about your own background, is that psychodynamic therapy. Can you explain what that is, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So psychodynamic is kind of sort of based off of Freud originally, not a Freudian analysis person, but there are aspects of psychodynamic that I really like to use. And it's basically how our upbringing, how our childhood impacted us. And I especially like this aspect in terms of how our stress response system responds to stress and anxiety and pressure. Because so much of our regulatory system and our stress response system is built in childhood. Our brain is built from the inside out and the bottom up. This is something I learned from Dr. Bruce Perry, who created a system called the neurosequential model of therapeutics, which is a really fancy name for basically how is the brain impacted by trauma, events in our lives, especially in the early years. And I got a lot of training from him on that. And so I really like to know about my clients' childhood experiences because then it tells me what their brain was sort of trying to scan for and understand about the world around them. Because as parents, we are the first introduction to the world for our children, and how we show up is going to be how the child's brain starts to understand what the world's like. Is it a safe place? Is it an unsafe place? If, your parents are fighting a lot and there's a lot of loud noises, there's going to be a lot of fear around maybe a lot of loud noises because that means there's uncertainty. There's not safety. If you have parents who are responding to your needs and giving you care when you're dysregulated, then you learn like, oh, this is how I calm when I'm upset. And then you learn those skills and take them as you get older. So that's sort of the way I use psychodynamic therapy in my practice specifically, is just how does your childhood impact the stress response system and the way that you regulate yourself when things are stressful and overwhelming.
Oh, that's interesting, because as parents, we only know how we were parented. We can watch other role models, neighbors or strangers, watch people, but really how we're programmed is how we were programmed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I tell my clients all the time, when you become a parent, your choices are to either parent the way you were parented, because that's your framework that you see as how parenting is,
yes,
or you have to be very intentional in doing it differently, which means you have to do a lot of work to unlearn what is sort of kind of automatic programming in terms of responding to stressors, such as your kid crying or your kid screaming at you. Totally normal behaviors for a toddler. But as a parent, if that triggers you, then you have to learn how to respond differently to that if you're trying to intentionally parent differently than how you were parented. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of healing.
Yes.
And it's really hard work, for sure.
And that's a thing, that healing, it happens over time.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're all of a sudden put in the situation with a newborn baby, that's hard to do that healing in that moment, because at that point we're just surviving.
Yeah,
absolutely. Figure out all this newness.
Yeah, it's such hard work to do, but it's such important work too. And I think that's when a lot of moms come to me realizing, I don't want to show up the way that my parents did for my kid. Yeah, how do I do this differently? And so I really try to work with them on finding coping skills in the moment that you can use, because not all coping skills are created equally when you're a parent. Some are more accessible than others. And so giving them immediately as at least a starting point. And then from there, let's work to figure out why this is triggering for you. What is that coming from? How do we let that go? Or how do we regulate it more so that it's not coming up so consistently when your newborn's crying, or when, again, maybe not quite so much newborn stage, but older infancy stage, they start hitting you because they're still trying to figure out how to control their body.
Yes.
And that, it's a startle response. Obviously, someone just hit you, but it's a baby. And so you have to respond differently. And how do you regulate in those moments when it's a really high stress, high triggering moment?
So you speak with parents and you send them back with you send them home with one coping skill at a time?
Not always one. It's however many I can get to work for them. My belief in my therapy practice is, there are a lot of coping skills out there. Not all coping skills work for everyone. And so it's important that we find the coping skills that work for you specifically.
Right.
That may take some time to figure out, or some parents are really good about saying oh, I know this works for me. And then we figure out, okay, how can we get that into your daily life more consistently? The coping skill I will always tell parents to try and use, because it's one that you always have access to and you can do it anywhere. And it's so simple that it feels kind of like duh, but it's to breathe. breathing.
It's not funny. We all forget to breathe.
We all forget to breathe, especially really deep, slow breathing, because it is the fastest, easiest way to regulate your nervous system. And it's one you always have access to, and it's free.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So do you work with both parents? Because
I usually work with one. I usually work with moms, typically are the ones that come to me. I have worked with a lot of dads too, but generally, mostly it's moms that I work with.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking, as a couple, we bring our own experiences and then we put those together and we integrate them and create a whole nother sort of parenting experience. And so if one person is coming to you, but not the other, there can be sort of, conflict sort of moments at home because there's just different paradigms.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely talked to a couple of people, like parents together, in terms of parenting together. Occasionally, I'm not a couples therapist at this point, so I have not done couples therapy directly. I would give them a referral for a couples therapist if there was really issues with the couple. A lot of parents I see, like one parent is with me and the other parent usually has another therapist, so they're kind of doing their own individual.
Yes,
which is great too. And I'm really happy when I hear that because it means I know that both parents are getting the support that they need. But yeah, definitely there's an aspect to this of if one parent is getting therapy and the other one isn't, and there's issues within the couple and the parenting, then that's also going to be a bit of a struggle as well.
Yes. Yeah. Can you explain to me what somatic therapy is?
Yeah. Somatic therapy is using the body as a tool for regulating your mental health. So it's really about how the body is interpreting like the mental health issues that you may be experiencing and using the body to regulate it. So talking about breathing as another one, how we move our bodies to try and regulate and how to manage our mental health. So it's more of like, instead of talking about the brain and using like cognitive behavioral therapy to address our mental health, it's using the body to address our mental health instead, and sort of doing a body-based regulation as sort of the beginning point of treatment rather than cognitive.
Can you share an example?
Yeah. So, breathing is the big one that I like to use because, it's so simple and it's so easily accessible. The other ways that you can use like somatic therapy is like walk and talks. A lot of therapists will walk and do therapy with their clients. And so it's, again, like moving that body to regulate it in terms of just calming again down that nervous system and that anxiety and that stress, because the way that the brain regulates in terms of the brainstem is through body-based, because the brainstem can't understand language because it's not the language center of the brain.
Yes.
And so in order to regulate that, you have to use body. You have to use what we would call repetitive rhythmic movement. Again, another Dr. Bruce Perry reference in talking about whatever you can do repetitively in movement will help regulate that part of the brain. So walking, swinging, breathing, reading actually counts as that because the eye movements are also, so it doesn't have to be big movements. It can be little ones, or whatever you can add that repetitive movement into your life is what I bring to when I use like somatic therapy with my clients.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. What advice do you give to mothers? New mothers or early stage mothers, what's key advice?
I think the two pieces of key advice I say to almost all of my moms is find community, wherever that community is for you, whether it's family, friends, mom groups, because you can't do motherhood alone. There's just no way.
Yeah.
And the second one is you matter too, and you need to take care of yourself too, and finding ways to make sure that you're getting that care every day is important. Not just once a week, not just once a month, but every day, whatever that self-care looks like for you also matters, and to make sure that you have that care for yourself as well.
Wow. And that's so true, because as moms, we feel right away that we have to be everything to everybody. Mm-hmm. And we're pulled in so many directions. So to actually say and make that conscious choice to put yourself at a very early stage of motherhood into the equation, it makes sense. And how easy is that to actually?
It's not easy for sure. It always depends on your circumstances too. I find moms with a lot of family around them that is supportive have an easier time doing that versus mothers who don't have a lot of family or friends around them. that can help out or that can support them tend to have a harder time. That tends to lead to paid help, which is not always seen as the same, but is just as valuable and just as important. And again, so that puts in a financial aspect to it, which can also be a little bit tricky in terms of, do you have the finances to pay for that support?
Yes.
And so it's really just finding out what is available to you and taking, using that as much as possible when you can. For us, we have some family around us that can help, and that has made it a lot easier in some aspects. But we also have paid help, and that also is just so valid and is in partnership with us in raising our children, and we appreciate that. And we've done a really good job of finding care that values align with ours as parents. And so our kids are getting the same message there as they are with us. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it possible for me to do things like run a business and take care of myself and support my kids in the way that I want to. And so it may not be easy, but there are mechanisms out there to help figure out what it is that you need as a parent. And hopefully you can find those resources and find that support. And just being able to care for yourself. Because if you're not okay, your child's not going to be okay. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you as a parent are doing what you can to care for yourself so that you can show up in the way that you want to.
Yes. Yeah. You said before we started our podcast that the mom's mental health matters. Mm-hmm. And because there's such a ripple effect when that is out of balance. Mm-hmm. And everybody suffers because the mom is usually the hub and the glue that hold things together.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts? And this is a completely different topic, but connected to mental wellness and is digital. What are your thoughts around that for your two boys going forward?
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation we're constantly having. I think it's particularly hard, again, being in Silicon Valley around a lot of tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's so much tech around us, and my husband's in tech. So it's also just part of our everyday lives. I think the big thing that we've come up with is structure and consistency around the structure and rules that we've put in place. So, we don't have movie nights on school nights or screens really at all on school nights. If we do have a movie night, it's together as much as we can be together, obviously with a 13-month-old. He's not really joining movie night as much. And so I usually am with him somewhere else. But, either my husband's with him or I'm with him and my husband's with the baby. He will join us eventually when he's old enough. And also, if we're going to do screen times, it's together. My husband's a big gamer, and a big core memory for him was playing games with his mom, being in her lap. And so that's something that he's introduced with our oldest. And it's actually something that they bond with together, and they talk about the game and they talk about the characters. And so even though, yes, it's maybe more screen time than most people, it's also a bonding experience. And so it's together and it's learning. And so we try to make it as much of a family affair as possible with limits and, structure around it as much as possible.
Okay. Well, you've put a lot of thought into it, and it just adds another level of complexity to parenting that is already complex.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does. I know we've had a lot of conversations about when they get their devices, if they get their own devices. Luckily, we still have some time before that is really introduced. But right now, it's just the TV or appropriate games that, my husband will play with him, or at least he'll be in his lap while he's playing, and they'll talk about the game that they're playing together. And they've really enjoyed it. They've had a really fun time bonding over that together. And then he'll play out the game in real life when he's, doing regular, playing with toys. And so that's kind of fun to see him sort of play out.
Yeah. And integrate.
So it's integrated.
Yeah. Interesting. So Laura, knowing what you know now, and it could be you're building your business as an entrepreneur, as a parent, as a therapist, whatever first thing that comes to your mind, knowing what you know now, what would you do the same? And what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? Because that's always the easier one to answer, I think, because you know what went wrong and what you done. Both actually with becoming a mom and building this business is community. Having people around you that support you, that can give you guidance, who have been there before and can kind of give you support and advice as you're going through it, who are kind of on the other side of it, is so important. And I I wish I had done that the first time with my first birth and pregnancy. I'm really glad I did it with my second. I had a lot of more community and support around me when I had my second son. And that just made a world of difference in my mental health, in my postpartum experience as an individual and as a family. And same with this business. I wish I had started it with community around me. I started before I had my second and then stopped when I was on maternity leave. And starting it again, I had more intention of creating community around it. And it's been a lot better, having more community as I'm building this business up. So that would be what I would do differently if I did it all over again from scratch, is community.
And what is it, just before you move on to what you do the same, what is it about community? What do you get from your community?
You get validation for what you're going through, that you're not alone, that it's not unique, because you feel like you're the only person going through what you're going through when you're going through postpartum, when you're going through building a business, and that it's all hard. And so when you talk to other people who have been through it and they say, oh yeah, I felt the same way too. I struggle with that too. Here are some things that I found helpful. Here are my resources, for the business or for, postpartum. And that just makes a world of difference in not feeling so alone and so isolated.
Yes.
Because it can feel very isolating, both building a business and being in postpartum. What I would do the same is I definitely don't think I would start this business any earlier. I don't think I was ready to jump into such a difficult space in terms of just how much work it takes.
Yes.
So I'm really glad I did it when I did it. Would I be further ahead if I had done it sooner before kids? Sure. But I would not have been as open to the experience or as gritty, I guess is the best word I can come up with how much effort it takes. I probably would have given up and felt defeatist much earlier on. So I'm glad I did it when I did it, and, just going to keep going from there and hopefully continue to build what I'm building. In terms of my birth and my pregnancies, again, I think the timing of them were perfect. I think we were ready when we had them, and I think we timed it really well.
Yes.
There are times I've thought about if they were closer in age, would that have been easier? Because basically that would just mean I wouldn't be in the stage I'm at with my baby and he'd be further along, but then I wouldn't have the baby that I have now. And I absolutely love him. Yeah. And I love my 4-year-old. And if I'd had them at different times, they wouldn't be who they are. And I'm just so grateful and happy and lucky with the 2 boys that I have. And so I don't think I would change when I had them, because it was just the right time to have them for us, financially, emotionally, mentally. And yes, they're 3 years apart, but you know what? That's a beautiful age gap too. And we're just going through those phases together with them. And, they'll grow and have different phases no matter what the age gap is.
Yeah, for sure. How did you know, just one more question, how did you know you were ready when you said, when I was ready, I knew, you wouldn't have been ready, but how did you know? What, was there a moment?
I don't know if there was so much a moment for me. I was definitely ready sooner than my husband. His threshold was always, I want to be 30 when we have our kids. And I think part of that was just his own stability of like his job, and he just wanted to enjoy being married, just the two of us, a little bit longer.
Yes, yeah.
We were married in 2017, so I think we were married like 3 years before we had 4 years before we had our first. And so I think that was really important. So it was just making sure that we felt like we had enough time together, just the two of us, and really strengthened our relationship, but also financially, kids are expensive in the United States.
Yes.
Especially in Silverware.
Yes, for sure.
And so we wanted to make sure that we had the finances to feel like we could afford what we needed to afford for kids. And obviously it's never going to be perfect 100% out. Everything's going to be lined up, but as much as we could, we wanted to control having the most we could have lined up before we had our kids. Yeah. And it worked out really well.
Good. What I was asking as well is, how did you know you were ready to start your business?
That's a much easier question for me to answer because it's a very clear moment. My husband has been wanting me to open my own business for years because he thought, he had more belief in me being able to run my own business than I did at the time. But I got promoted to be a supervisor for the program that I'd been a therapist in, a birth to 5 program in the county. I knew it was a tough position to be a supervisor for this particular group. I had been warned about that from previous supervisors, but I really felt passionately about this program, and I'd already had a 2-year-old at that point. So I told my boss, you have a year to make this job sustainable for me with a child. or I'm not going to stay. So I gave them a year. And during that time, we tapped a little bit into having private clients on the side. It was really doable and it felt really nice. And when a year passed and nothing had really changed, and we realized I couldn't be that stressed out at work and my husband couldn't also be that stressed out at work, we said, look, we're done. We need to have a change.
Yeah.
And so that's when we said, you've been enjoying the clients on the side. It seems really doable. Let's just do the private practice route and see how it goes. And I ended up really loving it. And when I came back from maternity leave the second time, I said, I really want to make this a business now. I really, not just me, 5 clients a day, churning in, churning out, but I really want to make this like a program where I'm offering multiple different services. And, with that joy and that motivation, we decided, yeah, let's go all hands in. We're doing a private practice business and building something from the ground up. And so that's how we got here.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. Life is just a journey, and we're all where we are because of the choices we make.
Mm-hmm.
Some choices seem small that turn into be monumental.
Yeah.
May I ask you some questions off my board game?
I would love that.
Oh, well, thank you. But when was the last time, Laura, that you were confronted with one of life's greatest lies?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to get on my soapbox on this one. Okay. It may not be the last time, but it's the one that sticks into my mind the most and brings the most emotional, passion in me. The lie about that you will drop all the baby weight if you breastfeed. I was so mad the first baby I had, and I nursed him and the pounds were falling off magically out of nowhere. And then I go and talk to other moms like, oh yeah, no, that's not a thing. And I was like, then why are we telling moms that it's a thing? It's this whole thing like, oh, breastfeed because you'll lose all that baby weight. You should breastfeed. And it's like, that shouldn't be the only reason you breastfeed. And obviously breastfeeding is a journey that's individual to all moms and is not always the journey for them. But don't tout it as this is the reason to breastfeed and that it's going to magically happen, because it doesn't. And so that just, it irks me so much to this day.
I'm so glad I asked that. It's so great, because no matter what generation, we are all told that. So that is great. I'll have to go out.
Why? Just stop it. There's other reasons to breastfeed that are better. Just no.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm going to go ask my daughter who's pregnant if she believes that lie. I will do that right after this podcast.
Yes. Tell her that it's not true and that, there are other reasons to breastfeed, and hopefully it goes well for her too.
Yes, yeah. Well,
breastfeeding is its own challenge as well.
Yes, yeah. And its own miracle.
Yes, absolutely.
You're able to do
I've been so lucky and blessed that I could nurse both of my boys.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's it.
It doesn't always work out for everyone. So I'm grateful that I did nurse them as long as I've nursed them. I was also grateful for when formula was needed that we had it as well.
Yeah, because that's the thing that I feel badly for new moms. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. It's okay. Your child will be just fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what advice would you give your younger high school self?
High school self. I think my high school self was very determined to do things a certain way and in a specific way. And if it didn't happen that way, then the world was falling apart. And so I think I would tell that younger version of myself that it's okay if things don't go the way you planned, or you don't hit the milestones that you want to hit when you hit them, that it's okay to be flexible, it's okay to adjust, and that it actually might end up being better if you just let go of the plan that you had in front of you.
That's so true, isn't it? And just trust the process.
Yes.
Hard to do.
Hard to do. I use that phrase so much, but I hate it that it's true. And
I know.
Being in the process is not always fun, but it is true. Sometimes you just have to let go.
Yes.
And just trust the process and see where it leads you.
Yeah. Trusting is difficult, isn't it? Especially when we want to control everything.
Absolutely.
So a couple more. What shoulds have you been told that are more about the person who said them than they are about you.
I remember this one lovely family friend of mine told me I should have a live band at my wedding. And I said, no, I don't have to have a live band at my wedding if I don't want. They're expensive. Bless her heart. I love her. She's a dear friend and I love her to bits and she loves my kids to bits. But that I was just like, I don't know about that.
Was that more about her than it was?
Yeah, I think she had just recently come from a wedding where there was a live band and just how great it was. And I'm sure it was great. And live music is wonderful. You know, I have a musician brother who does live music. And of course, I always want to support him, but I also have to pay for said band.
Yeah.
I may not have the finances to pay an appropriate wage for live musicians, which I would want to, of course, do. So that was a big should that I was just like, that's more about your preference than really about the practicalities of paying for a wedding by my husband paying for our wedding on our own. I think there's a lot of shoulds in parenting that I couldn't even name off the top of my head. There's so many. And it's one of the things I would see the most with moms. Like, I should be, giving no screens to my kids. I should be giving them whole organic food. I should be doing more of this and more of that. And I think a lot of those shoulds have more to say about the person giving the should than about the person who's receiving it. Because at the end of the day, you can only make the best choices for your family and only you can know what that is. And everybody else's shoulds don't impact that. They don't know what your kid is like. They don't know what your family dynamic is like.
Yes.
And for them to make that call for you just doesn't make sense because every parent is the expert on their own child. I really, truly believe that.
I would agree with that too.
And I can come in as a provider, as an expert in child development and parenting, but at the end of the day, it's your values, your child, your parenting. And that's why I'm okay with the decision that you're making, with obviously the caveat, as long as everybody is safe.
Yes.
And so that's why when I meet with my clients, I say, I don't prescribe to a specific parenting methodology or formula.
Yes.
I can tell you what is researched and what is seen as effective. But what parenting tool works for one child doesn't work for every child. And so my job coming into the space and helping you with your parenting is what works for you, what aligns with your values as a parent, and what works with your child. Because every child is different and unique. And some kids need a different framework, need a different tactic, different approach. And so let's work together and figure out what that approach is and tweak whatever parenting tool we want to use to match what works for you and your child and your values.
That's really valuable because as we've talked about, being a new parent is difficult. And shoulds are, I think, steeped in guilt. And so when you don't fulfill a should that you feel that somebody has told you, because you want to please that person probably, because that person's probably close to a parent or a close friend, like you said. And it's so letting that go is a process too.
Yeah. For sure.
So one more question, because I'm sure you do this a lot. Describe a time when you trusted your inner voice.
I love this question because this is something I've had to do with both of my boys, is trusting what I'm doing is okay as a parent because I know what's going on with my kid and I know that whatever struggle they're having will come to an end. And I will be a very specific example of this. My oldest has reactive asthma. And what that essentially means is every time he gets like a cold or an allergic reaction to something, he gets asthma. And we've had a whole journey with this. But essentially, at the end of the day, he just gets an inhaler that helps mitigate, the symptoms and helps him with his breathing. The first night that those symptoms get triggered is the worst night of sleep. And I trust my inner voice of like, this is the bad night. The next night will be better. And it will get better over time as we keep using the medicine, because we've seen this pattern over and over again. And I had to trust my inner voice of not catastrophizing, like, oh my God, we're never sleeping again. Oh my God, it's going to last forever. And now as I've gone through this with a second kid, I'm like, nope, every bad behavior, every bad issue, every, difficult period, all of that is just for now. You will sleep again.
Yeah.
They'll sleep through the night again. And I'm going through this with my youngest now too. When he has a disruptive night, I'm like, no, okay, we've had a bad night now. Eventually we'll have a good night again. How long that lasts is a question mark, but we'll get through it, because everything that you have with this kid and going through with this kid is just for now. And that's also true for when things are going really great and everything's moving smoothly. That's also just for now.
Yes.
And we will just live in the joy that is that moment, because we know something will disrupt it again. And whatever that is will just be for now, and we'll get out of that phase too.
Yes.
And so I've really gotten good at cultivating that inner voice instead of catastrophizing and like saying, oh my God, this will never end.
Yes.
No, it's just, we'll get through it. We'll deal with it as it comes. You're doing the right thing. You know how to handle this. You've seen this before, and just kind of go through what works.
Great. Words to live by, not easy to implement, but words to live by. So,
Absolutely.
So Laura, words of wisdom that you can share with other parents. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Definitely the first thing that comes to mind is always take care of yourself. You matter. I think that's a pretty obvious one now after this conversation, how much I really believe that.
Yes.
And that you are doing a great job. No matter where you're at in your parenting journey, you are doing a great job. And remind yourself of that when things are tough. How your child behaves is not necessarily a reflection of who you are as a parent. Kids just are kids. And sometimes they have hard times and they have big feelings. And you are doing a great job trying to be there for them and work through whatever it is that they're working through. And you're doing great.
That's great. Oh, well, thank you very much for sharing and for being so real. And I know you'll be of help to other parents who are going through the beginnings of mother and parenthood.
Thank you. I hope so. Thank you so much. This was so fun and so lovely.
Thank you. If today's conversation reminded you of the importance of slowing down and reconnecting with your children, even in small moments, then this episode did exactly what it was meant to do. Laura shared something powerful. Trust your inner voice in parenting. Because while every phase can feel overwhelming, many of the difficult moments are temporary, but the connection you build lasts forever. I'm Adrienne Giffen, and you've been listening to Now You're Talking. If something in this conversation spoke to you, follow along on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Instagram, and subscribe or leave a review to help others find the show. Meaningful conversation can change how we see ourselves and each other. That's why I created Now You're Talking board game, a simple way to spark real conversation. If you'd like a way to start conversations like this with people in your life and be part of the movement to get people talking again, you can join the wait list for the game in the show notes. Let the conversations begin. Now you're talking.
I'm Michelle Abraham, and we are honored to have Adrienne Giffen's Now You're Talking podcast on our High Vibe Podcast Network. For more High Vibe shows like hers, head on over to highvibepodcastnetwork.com and grab your free gift from our gift vault from all of our hosts. Until then, stay high vibe.